November 6, 2020, Atlanta, Georgia. Outside the Monaco Hookah Lounge, around 2:48 a.m., gunfire breaks the silence. Surveillance footage later reviewed by investigators shows chaos. Figures running, headlights flashing, bodies dropping. Within minutes, one of Chicago's most controversial rising stars, King Von, is rushed to the hospital. He doesn't make it. Now rewind the tape, because what happened in that parking lot didn't start that night, and according to what fans believe, it didn't end there either. Fast forward to today, years later, and social media is going crazy again. People are connecting dots between Von's family, his inner circle, and Lil Durk. Old relationships, business ties, court cases, lyrics that feel a little too specific. Nothing is confirmed, but the conversation won't stop. Some fans are saying the bond never broke. Others believe there's more going on behind the scenes. Quiet alliances, unresolved loyalty, and maybe even legal implications that haven't fully surfaced yet. Here's what nobody is telling you. When you follow the paperwork, when you really think about the timeline, and when you listen closely to what's been said and what hasn't, it starts to look less like coincidence and more like something deeper. But the real question is, are these connections just loyalty? Or is there something bigger still unfolding behind the scenes? Chicago, early 2010s. The South Side is more than a location. It's a pressure cooker where reputation, loyalty, and survival are tightly connected. This is where King Von's story begins long before the fame, long before the viral moments, long before the world knew his name. According to public records and interviews, Von's early life was shaped by real street experiences that would later become the backbone of his music. This wasn't storytelling built in a studio. It was lived experience. And that distinction is important when you think about everything that follows. Rewind the tape to around 2014. Court documents from Cook County show Von facing serious legal charges tied to a high-profile case. He spends years fighting those accusations, and ultimately, he is acquitted. Let that sink in. For many fans, that moment becomes part of his identity, the idea that he beat the system and walked out with a second chance. But here's what nobody is telling you. Situations like that don't just disappear. Even when the case is over, the weight of it stays. The reputation stays. The attention stays. Now enter Lil Durk. By the mid-2000s, Durk is already establishing himself as one of Chicago's leading voices in hip-hop. He's navigating record deals, building industry relationships, and expanding his reach beyond the city. But beyond the music business, Durk also shares deep-rooted ties to the same environment Von came from. According to sources close to the situation, their relationship wasn't just about signing an artist. It was built on familiarity, trust, and a shared understanding of where they came from. By 2018, that connection turns into opportunity. Von signs to Durk's collective, Only the Family, commonly known as OTF. On paper, it's a label situation, but if you follow the timeline closely, it feels like more than that. OTF operates like a tight circle, almost like an extension of family, and fans noticed it immediately. The chemistry in their collaborations, on the way they spoke about each other in interviews, it didn't feel manufactured. Then comes December 2018. Von releases Crazy Story. The track spreads fast. YouTube views climbing into the millions. Social media buzzing. Reaction videos popping up everywhere. Fans are shocked, not just by the numbers, but by the delivery. The storytelling feels vivid, detailed, almost cinematic. Some listeners begin to speculate that the lyrics are tied to real-life events. Though nothing is confirmed, still, the authenticity becomes his brand. Think about the timeline. 2019 rolls in and Von's momentum only builds. He's dropping more music, appearing alongside Durk, performing in different cities. According to industry reports, his fan base is growing rapidly, especially among younger listeners who are drawn to his raw style. At the same time, Durk's own career is reaching new heights. Chart placements, major collaborations. The spotlight on OTF is getting brighter, but here's where things get layered. While the music is taking off, the environment they came from hasn't changed. According to various interviews and public discussions, long-standing tensions in Chicago were still active during this time, and when artists carry real-life history into a rapidly growing career, those worlds can overlap in unpredictable ways. That's not speculation, that's a pattern the industry has seen before. Now add the emotional layer. In early 2020, Von posts frequently on Instagram, clips of him laughing, traveling, recording music. There's a sense of momentum, even joy. Fans engage heavily in the comments, celebrating his rise. One post in particular, shared just weeks before November, shows him smiling with friends, caption light and carefree. At the time, it feels like another moment in a rising career. Looking back, it hits differently. Let that sink in, because while everything on the surface looks like success, streams, fame, recognition, there are still undercurrents that most people don't see. Subtle hints in interviews, lines in songs that feel heavier than they first appear. According to some fans, Vaughn occasionally referenced unfinished situations from his past, though again, nothing is confirmed and interpretations vary widely. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, OTF continues to move as a unit. Collaborations between Vaughn and Durk keep dropping, strengthening their public connection. Industry insiders describe the movement as strategic but also deeply personal. Oh, it's business, yes, but it's also loyalty, and that's the key word, loyalty. Because when you understand that foundation, everything that happens next starts to feel more complex. Not just a series of events, but a chain reaction tied to history, relationships, and choices that didn't begin in 2020. So as we move forward in the timeline, keep that in mind. This wasn't just a rise to fame, it was a rise built on something much deeper. And sometimes, what builds you up can also follow you. November 6th, 2020, Atlanta, Georgia. The clock is approaching 2:48 a.m. outside the Monaco Hookah Lounge, a popular nightlife spot where music, energy, and tension sometimes share the same space. According to police reports and investigative summaries, what begins as a confrontation quickly escalates. Surveillance footage later reviewed by authorities shows a group interaction turning physical, pushing, swinging, bodies shifting in tight formation. Then, within seconds, everything changes. Gunfire erupts, people scatter, cars halt mid-motion. It's chaos, captured frame by frame. Now rewind the tape slowly, because this moment isn't just about what happened, it's about how it unfolded. According to the Atlanta Police Department, multiple individuals were involved in the exchange. Some reports indicate that off-duty officers working security were present at the scene and responded to the gunfire. That detail matters. It introduces a second layer of complexity, law enforcement involvement during an active shooting. Follow the paperwork. Initial reports confirm that several people were struck, among them King Von. He is transported to a nearby hospital in critical condition. Despite medical efforts, he is later pronounced dead. He was 26 years old. Let that sink in. Now here's where things get technical. Investigators begin analyzing ballistic evidence, shell casings, firearm types, trajectories. According to law enforcement statements, multiple weapons were discharged during the incident. This creates what's known in legal terms as a multi-shooter scenario. In simple language, it means more than one person fired a weapon, making it significantly harder to determine who is responsible for each specific injury. And that distinction is critical, because in cases like this, prosecutors must establish direct causation, who fired which shot, and how that shot led to a specific outcome. Without clear forensic matches, the case becomes layered with uncertainty. According to public reports, authorities detained and questioned several individuals, but the legal outcomes tied directly to Von's death remain complex and, in some aspects, unresolved in the eyes of the public. Meanwhile, social media reacts in real time. Within hours, platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube are flooded with posts. Fans are shocked. Emotions run high. Some users begin sharing clips of the surveillance footage, while others post unverified accounts of what they believe happened. Names start trending, narratives begin forming, and almost immediately, conversations shift toward Lil Durk. Not because he was reported to be at the scene, there is no confirmed evidence placing him there, but because of his close association with Von, because of OTF. Because of the history that fans already knew about. Social media is saying, look at the bigger picture. But here's what nobody is telling you. Association is not evidence, and nothing in official police reports directly implicates Durk in the events of that night. Still, the speculation spreads. Unconfirmed reports suggest that people online began analyzing everything. Lyrics, past interviews, even travel timelines. Think about the timeline, users say, pointing to appearances, studio sessions, and public sightings. But again, these are interpretations, not verified conclusions. Now layer in another detail. According to some investigative summaries, off-duty officers fired shots during the incident, which raises additional legal questions. Use of force, justification, crossfire dynamics. In legal terms, this introduces the concept of justifiable use of deadly force, meaning officers are permitted to respond if they believe lives are in immediate danger, but determining how that applies requires a full review of evidence. Body camera footage, witness statements, and forensic reports. And much of that information is not fully public. Let that sink in, because when the public doesn't have complete access to facts, speculation fills the gaps. Now here's the emotional anchor that cuts through all of this. In the hours after the news breaks, a message begins circulating online, reportedly from someone close to Vaughn, short, raw. Wake me up from this. Whether verified or not, it spreads quickly because it captures what people are feeling. Disbelief, shock, pain. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, fans begin gathering. Phones out, heads down. Some crying, some silent. One voice in a video clip says, "This don't feel real." That moment doesn't come from a report or a document. It comes from real people reacting in real time. Back on the legal side, investigators continue their work. Interviews are conducted. Evidence is cataloged. According to official statements, the case involves multiple layers: civilian actions, officer responses, and conflicting accounts. And when you combine all of that, the result is not a simple narrative. It's a complex investigation, but social media doesn't wait for investigations. It builds its own version of events. And that's where things begin to blur. Because while the facts are still being processed, the story is already being told, piece by piece, post by post, theory by theory. So when people today look back at that night, they're not just looking at what happened, they're looking at everything that's been said about it since. And the question becomes, are we seeing the full picture, or just the parts that made the most noise? The days following November 6, 2020 feel heavy in a way that numbers and headlines can't fully explain. Chicago mourns, Atlanta processes, and across the internet, millions of fans try to make sense of what just happened. The loss of King Von isn't just another news story. It lands like a shockwave that keeps echoing. Murals begin appearing across Chicago's South Side. Candlelight vigils form. People gather not just to remember an artist, but to grieve someone they felt they knew through his music. Now rewind the tape for a second and sit with the human side of this. Von's family steps into the public eye, not by choice, but by circumstance. His mother shares emotional messages online, expressing a kind of pain that cuts through all the speculation. A son is gone. No theory, no breakdown, no viral post can change that. His sister too posts messages that fans quickly circulate. Raw, unfiltered grief. One line stands out in particular, widely shared across platforms. "We was just with you." Whether paraphrased or quoted, the emotion behind it is undeniable. Let that sink in, because while social media debates timelines and connections, there's a family trying to process a permanent loss. Meanwhile, in the music industry, the impact is immediate. Streams of Von's music surge. His songs re-enter charts. Collaborators post tributes. But behind the numbers, there's a shift in energy. According to industry observers, Von wasn't just rising, he was becoming one of the most compelling storytellers in modern hip-hop. His trajectory suggested longevity. That future is now gone. And then there's Lil Durk. In the days after the incident, Durk posts tributes, expressing grief and loyalty. Photos, captions, lyrics. Fans interpret them as messages directly tied to Von. Some say he's carrying the legacy. Others believe the emotion in his music changes after that moment. More reflective, more layered. But here's the key distinction. Interpretation is not confirmation. While fans believe certain lyrics reference real-life situations, nothing in official documentation confirms those connections. Still, the conversation grows louder. Social media is going crazy with theories. TikTok videos break down Durk's songs line by line, as YouTube channels analyze interviews and past statements. Twitter threads attempt to connect people, events, and timelines. Follow the paperwork, users say, but often the paperwork they're referring to isn't official. It's pieced together from fragments, assumptions, and unverified sources. Now let's step into the legal angle. In the months following the incident, several federal cases unrelated directly to Von begin surfacing in headlines. Prosecutors allege broader criminal activity involving individuals from overlapping circles within Chicago's rap scene. Court documents reference names, affiliations, and alleged actions. Important distinction: these are allegations, not convictions. And none of these filings directly confirm a coordinated connection involving Von's death or any ongoing relationship between his family and Durk beyond what is publicly known. But in the public eye, lines start to blur. People see familiar names in documents and assume direct links. They hear lyrics and assume confessions. They see silence and assume secrets. That's how narratives form, even when the facts remain incomplete. Think about the timeline. Late 2020 into 2020. 2021. Durk continues releasing music, achieving commercial success, and expanding his influence. At the same time, Von's legacy is being preserved through posthumous releases, tributes, and fan support. According to sources close to the situation, there is ongoing respect between those connected to Von and those within OTF. But the nature of those relationships, how deep they go, what they involve is not fully public, and that's where speculation thrives. Now, here's the emotional moment that often gets overlooked. A young fan uploads a video months later, standing at Von's gravesite. The camera lingers on the headstone, flowers placed carefully. The caption reads, "You still got people riding for you." The video spreads, not because it reveals new information, but because it reminds people of the impact Von had beyond headlines and controversies. That's the part numbers can't measure. Back in the industry, business continues. Labels move forward, artists release music, but there's an unspoken reality. When an artist like Von is lost, it creates both a void and a shift. Opportunities change, narratives change, and for those closely connected, finds the emotional weight doesn't disappear just because time passes. Meanwhile, Durk's public image evolves. He's seen as both a successful artist and someone who has endured repeated personal losses. Fans are divided in how they interpret his journey. Some view him as resilient, pushing forward despite adversity. Others, based on unconfirmed reports and online speculation, question whether there are deeper layers still hidden from public view. Nothing is confirmed, and that phrase matters more than ever here. Because when you separate verified facts from assumptions, what remains is a story still unfolding, one shaped by grief, loyalty, business, and perception. So as the months turn into years, the fallout doesn't end. It just changes form, from headlines to memories, from investigations to interpretations, from loss to legacy. And the question quietly lingers in the background. How much of what people believe is rooted in fact, and how much is shaped by everything they've seen, heard, and felt since that night? Now zoom out, because to really understand why people still talk about connections between King Von's family and Lil Durk, you have to step beyond one night, one city, one incident. This is bigger than that. This sits at the intersection of hip-hop culture, street reality, and an industry that often benefits from both. Here's what nobody is telling you. The music industry has always rewarded authenticity. The closer an artist's story feels to real life, the more it resonates. Fans want to feel like what they're hearing is real, not scripted. And artists like Von built their entire identity on that raw, unfiltered storytelling. But when real life becomes the content, the line between art and reality starts to disappear. Think about the timeline. From Chicago streets to national stages, Von's rise wasn't just fast. It was rooted in a past that didn't vanish when the music took off. And the same goes for many artists who come from similar environments. According to interviews, documentaries, and public discussions, success doesn't automatically separate someone from where they came from. In many cases, it amplifies everything: attention, pressure, and sometimes conflict. Let that sink in. Now bring Durk back into focus. Lil Durk isn't just another artist in this story. He represents a bridge between two worlds, the streets and the industry. He's navigated both, built a brand, built a movement with only the family. And when someone like Von comes into that circle, it's not just a contract, it's a continuation of shared history. That's why fans still feel like the connection never really ended. Because in hip-hop, especially in movements like OTF, relationships aren't always defined by public statements or legal documents. They're defined by loyalty, by what people show, and sometimes by what they don't show. But here's the legal reality. There is no confirmed court ruling or official document that states any ongoing hidden coordination or deeper involvement beyond known relationships. Allegations in separate cases mention overlapping circles, but overlapping circles do not automatically equal direct connection. That distinction is critical, because without it, speculation can easily turn into assumed truth, and that's where the power dynamics come in. Think about how narratives are shaped. Labels promote music, media platforms amplify stories, fans interpret everything, lyrics, interviews, even silence. And in that ecosystem, perception can become stronger than fact. When people say, follow the paperwork, what they often mean is follow the pieces that are visible. But not everything is public. Not every conversation, not every decision, not every relationship is documented in a way the public can access. So gaps form, and in those gaps, theories grow. Social media plays a huge role here. Platforms like TikTok and YouTube turn speculation into content. A single lyric gets replayed 1,000 times. A pause in an interview becomes a clue. Fans are shocked, people are divided, and suddenly narratives start to feel real even when nothing is confirmed. Now pause and think about the emotional layer again. Oh, why do people want there to be a connection? Because it keeps Von's story alive. Because it gives meaning to loss. Because it creates a sense that something is still unfolding. That the story didn't just end in Atlanta. And in a culture where loyalty is everything, the idea that bonds remain intact, even quietly, feels important to people. That doesn't make it fact, but it explains why the belief exists. Meanwhile, the industry continues moving. New artists rise. New stories take over headlines. But patterns remain. Artists with real-life ties navigating fame. Legal situations intersecting with careers. Public perception shaping private realities. It's a cycle that keeps repeating. And here's the uncomfortable question. Does the industry do enough to protect artists from that cycle? Or does it benefit from it continuing? Oh, because when authenticity sells, there's little incentive to separate the art from the environment it comes from. Let that sink in. Now bring it back to the present. Years later, the conversation hasn't faded. If anything, it's evolved. People aren't just asking what happened. They're asking what it all means. They're looking at Durk's continued success, Von's lasting impact, and the silence around certain details, trying to piece together a bigger picture. But the truth is, some pieces are missing, some answers aren't public, and some questions may never be fully resolved. So when people say they feel like there's still a connection, what they're really responding to isn't just evidence. It's a combination of history, emotion, and perception. And until every detail is clearly documented, that feeling will remain, not as fact, but as a question that refuses to go away. So after everything we just walked through, take a second and really think about it. We rewound the tape, we followed the timeline, we looked at the rise, the moment, the fallout, and the bigger picture. And somehow, the story still doesn't feel finished. Because at the center of all this are two names that still carry weight. King Von and Lil Durk. One life lost too early, one still moving through the industry at the highest level, and in between them, a connection that people can't stop talking about. But here's what we know for sure. Nothing is fully confirmed beyond what's public. Everything else, that's interpretation, speculation, and pieces people are trying to connect. So now the question is on you. Do you think the connection people talk about is real and ongoing? Or is social media building a narrative that feels true but isn't backed by actual proof? And here's another one. Are fans noticing patterns that deserve more attention? Or are they reading too deep into lyrics, timing, and silence? I want you to go to the comments and really speak on it. Not just quick takes, break it down. What do you think is actually going on behind the scenes? If you made it this far, you already know. We don't just report stories, we dig deeper, we ask questions, and we look at what others ignore. So hit that like button if you felt this breakdown. Subscribe if you want more real, unfiltered narratives like this. And stay locked in, because sometimes the biggest stories aren't the ones that are told clearly. They're the ones still unfolding in the background.